First up here we have Wang Shu's color keys for your digital illustration for the final project. I thought that all three was really great. Um, Beautiful colors in each one of them, and each one of them kind of tells a story just through those colors. Um, Composition wise, I think it's really, really nice. Even though you have the character pretty much center of the whole illustration, the sweeping horizontal wide illustration, I think, really um, allowed you to play around with the background and really um, show just how beautifully immersed and how beautifully open that world you are trying to create is. As far as the lighting goes, I think it's very well done as well. You have the main light source, which is probably going to be the 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 axe hammers floating about, as well as the winged creature, the fairy, and casting the light on your woodcutter right down here. And your secondary light looks like it's coming from the background, which is the sky. Now, as far as which of the three I ended up recommending, again, this is your choice, which one you ultimately go with in the end. I kind of like your base local light um, illustration, which is the first one. Only because I think the colors are much richer, and I like the green, and the fact that he stands out a lot more against the the green background with his red jacket. I really like the blue and red as well, but that's something you have to play around with. He kind of gets lost a little bit in the middle, even if he's in the middle. And um, and here as well, the colors seem a little bit more menacing, as opposed to here, a little bit more neutral, telling a story. So let's go with that one for now. So for here, my recommendations for the critique is, first off, let's start with the character. I think the character's silhouette's really cool. I like his shape, very interesting shape. It's very stylized, which is really awesome. I would highly recommend, however, to add maybe some kind of hint of another arm. Let's see if we can do that. No, we're smoothing. Forget to turn that off. Just so that it wouldn't look so um, so odd just having one arm outstretched. Now, of course, I'm not too familiar with the story, so I might have to go back in there whether or not he has one arm or not. But yeah, adding a second arm would probably help out with that. For the composition, like I said, it's really, really beautiful. I even like the simplicity of your style by having it very simplified shapes and maybe having a shadow and a light just in each one of those singular elements would be pretty cool. For example, here you have shadow and you have the mid-tone, and then you have the light right here, which is, and you can see that here as well. Although I would, however, suggest that instead of using gradients or the soft brush, maybe add just another just another layer, maybe just another color temperature for it, just another layer using a hard brush so that you get a little bit more dimension out of it. I like the fact that you push the background right over here. The vines is beautifully done. It looks like it's coming forward towards us. Maybe I would darken this foreground vine just a little bit more to show that it really is like up in front. Just so that these two elements create like a framing device. Um, Next up would probably be right here. Um, just general cleanup, Right now it looks a little bit roughly sketched, which is totally fine. You know, you're still in your work in progress, so just a little heads up to just clean this up just a little bit. Maybe even introduce some textured brushes in there, like my pencil brush that I've included, or any brushes that you come across, just so that you get a little bit more style with each brush stroke. Like even on the trees. See how there's a little bit more texture to the edge there? I mean, you could use the lasso tool. I think that's what you've used here. You could use the lasso tool. But then after you create those shapes, you go back in there and just punch it up with a little texture. Something that would make it look a little bit more lush and gives it a little bit more depth. One thing that I really liked about your second color study was the fact that the background color was a little cooler. Here, it looks like everything is in the same um, plane, even with the beautiful water right over here. That's because you have similar colors from the trees. Every foliage is pretty much similar, and then you go in the background, it's that warm color. So maybe introducing a different color in there. Maybe some kind of cool color. I mean, you have a nice cool color here. Even the red is a little bit cool, which is great, which makes him stand out against the really warm environment. Color. Let's try purple first. It goes really well in connecting the really warm color in the jacket. Maybe lower the opacity just a little bit. See that little bit of change? Now you push the background back just a little bit more, so that you get, again, more spatial depth in between. Let's see how this looks like in blue. Maybe blue works as well. Just, again, adding a little separation. And finally, my last recommendation would be to just play around with the light just a little bit more. Really make that stand out. And you have a little bit of rim lighting here, which is awesome. Now, like, really play up that rim lighting, just so you know how bright that fairy is. And then maybe use a soft brush on another layer and have that light really affect maybe overlay. It's going to affect a lot more the surroundings as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you could use the blur tool as well to bring things forward or push things back. But I think overall, a little bit of cleanup here and there, a little bit more texture, and just paying attention to the fine details, and I think you're set to go. Alright, great job, Richard. Next up, we have Kayla, and please pronounce it. I mean, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I apologize. Um, and it looks like your story is the Hansel and Gretel. I actually thought that your composition was quite beautiful. Let's just take a quick close look at one of them. A very classic composition. You pretty much use the golden ratio quite well by have if you split it up into 3 parts across, 3 parts horizontal, vertical, then you're gonna have more focus in one of the lower quadrants on the lower right side, which is pretty awesome. You can also apply the golden spiral on this, and if you do that, then you're gonna have your focus piece starting in center, and if you go out, it kind of has that beautiful flow all throughout. Yeah, the simplicity I think is really cool. I really like the simplicity, especially on the background right over here. On the foreground characters, I think they need um, a little bit more detail and a little bit more restructuring. You could keep it the same style, but we want to make sure that this is going to be a fully rendered illustration with nice structures, and the characters are definitely recognizable as such. Um, what else? Out of the 4 value studies, after reading the comments below, which is great from everybody, I kind of like this really warm one, as you pointed out, which is going to be this, I believe, the sunset. I think it's really nice, really strong, gives it a different type of mood compared to the rest of the illustrations. This one's a bit more menacing. There's a bit more of a dire need to get out kind of situation. And this almost tells a story like this is after escaping, and this is after finding themselves out of the house, and now they just, there's this urgency to just escape. However, the nighttime setting one is a little bit more different. Same illustration, different colors, and the colors are telling me that these guys are lost and they are still searching. And you could place this part in the very beginning of the story, which I think is great. I also like the cool colors, and hence why the reason why I chose this one as my suggestion is because of the nice cool colors that you have here. At first I thought that it's a father and daughter lost in the forest, until I remembered that your story is Hansel and Gretel. I would probably going back to the character structure and make sure that there's detail on the characters. Make sure that they are recognizable as brother and sister. Maybe even have her come up just a little bit higher so that you can see that, they are closer to age. If not, I really like the fact that she's a little bit younger as well. So maybe just really play up the youthfulness to the characters, and just give them a little bit something to make sure that we as the audience recognize them as children. Going back to the story, yes, like I said, it feels like they're getting lost here. And especially with the forest kind of enveloping them all around, I think you did a fantastic job with the trees. Very simple shapes, but very effective. I'm not sure what kind of style you're going for here, but I say keep the silhouette. The silhouette's very nice for the trees. However, for the for the ground elements, maybe have textures on those, so that you can keep this pretty much free. Maybe even darker. Like, let's see if we can show one for the tree. Multiply, brand new layer, set to multiply. By having the darker areas up here, and then as you go down, there's more light here. Just the way a city skyline would appear at night. One person I suggest going to and looking up references of, I think would work great on yours, is Ivan Earl. Let's see if we can find him. he is the main illustrator artist. Fantastic artist, by the way. One of the old master illustrators from back in the day. He did Sleeping Beauty. And, growing up in California, I've seen a lot of his artwork, especially around the Carmel area. But let's see if we can bring it up here. Just look at the different textures and the different, it's all about the silhouette, much like you're doing it with your trees. However, within those silhouettes, there are beautiful textures and beautiful design and beautiful color variations. So that's definitely someone I suggest looking up. Ivan Earl, weirdly spelled first name, but it's right over here. Eyvind Earl, Earle. Just stunning illustrations. Again, it's all about the silhouette, and everything else is texture within it. And it's such a hip thing to do nowadays. Him and artists like Brittany Lee and Mary Blair, who did It's a Small World After All in Disneyland. So I think that you could push a lot of textures here. I mean, if you are deciding to start over and set this up in layers, unless you already have it in layers, you could easily use, let's see, let me just create a quick shape. Let's say this shape right here. Actually, here. Which you probably use the polygon lasso tool. And then from those shapes, either use lock transparency or create a clipping mask using Option Command or Alt Control G. And then use one of the texture brushes, like this. Make sure opacity's on. And just add some texture in there. Like so. So yeah, it's something you definitely want to start looking at and start playing around with. Again, I think your composition is pretty cool. Great setup. I think you just need to focus in on the character just a little bit more. I would make the foreground elements a little bit more saturated, like the trees, the characters, and push the background back in desaturation just a little bit so that it's not glowing blue. But if you can make that work, I highly suggest going with it. Just gonna make sure that this light affects all. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for how you handle light as well. So yeah, those are pretty much my recommendations. I cannot wait to see your work in progress. If you have any questions or concerns, just feel free to get a hold of me. Next up for the color keys, we have Ashley's illustration, which is the story of the star-crossed lovers. I managed to actually get a hold of a text for it, and I found it quite amazing, actually. The fact they did dedicate like a couple of festivals based on for that. I mean, I've seen a lot of anime that kind of focuses on star-crossed lovers, so I'm all in as far as the story goes. For the composition, like I said last time, your compositions were really nice. I like the fact that they're off-centered, and then you have all these trees and plants kind of you create like a framing device to make sure that they are the main focus. As far as the color keys go, I like that you played around with the different color schemes and just kind of place them everywhere. I think I get what you're trying to go for here by having almost like a very surreal, very neon, almost fantastical thing about it. However, I would highly recommend maybe just subduing some of the colors a little bit so that your audience will be able to focus in on your main subjects rather than having their eyes kind of just go everywhere. Kind of like too much of a good thing, a little bit of an overload rather. I get you. You know, Photoshop is hard to learn, and I definitely commend you on trying it out and really using the tool. But you want to think of Photoshop much like Manga Studio or Clip Studio, in that a lot of the tools are pretty much similar. So once you get used to the tools, and that's pretty much the the little obstacle there, I think you'll find that they're pretty much the same in some aspects. I mean, yes, Manga Studio does one thing a lot better than Photoshop sometimes, but as far as like a lot of even with Corel Painter, there's a lot of similarities that you could kind of hone in on and use as a anchor point to learn the software. But like I said, I highly commend you um, for sticking it out and trying Photoshop. But if you're still having a really difficult time and you think this is gonna push back on your grades a bit, then you know I I don't mind you using Manga Studio. I leave the last project for you guys to use any of the programs that you feel comfortable with. This class is, after all, a digital painting class, and that includes all different painting softwares. Now, for the composition I chose, so you get this out of the way, I actually chose the second one, which is right over here. The reason being, I think, is because the colors kind of go together a little bit better. You have the cool colors right over here, especially tying into the grass. Even the grass even though it's a little bit warmer. And then also the bright red, pink or red hair. I think it's a great touch and a great way for us to kind of look at the character. And I also like the white hair on the female character, because I think that gives her like a little bit of a softness and kind of plays up to almost a moon and sun kind of situation. But like I said, the colors are a little bit too much on both of them, so I would subdue just a little bit. For example, on the greens here, I'd probably choose a cooler green, something like this. You see the little difference there? As opposed to having it a really, really bright neon green. A cooler green would connect with the red just a little bit better. I like the purple on her. I'd probably subdue that really bright purple just a little bit. I mean, pops of color are wonderful. I think they are a great way to, um, add a lot of interest within the illustration. But then if you have a lot pop of color here, pop of color there, pop of color everywhere, then we're not going to know where to look at next. Now for the grass in the foreground, I would probably take the grass that you have here and just carry it over and switch it. Like put the grass, the cool shadow grass here, just so that your background, so that it will ground characters. Let's see if we could do this. It will ground your characters into a harder surface. Again, going back to not having too much colors, or not too much huge pops of colors that wants your attention all the time. See color. Actually multiply. So it almost neutralizes the foreground just a little bit so that we have our focus on the two characters right over here. For the background, yeah, you could play with that beautiful nighttime sky. Really play up the fantastical space element about it, and the fact that, I guess it has to do with the alignments of constellations and planets, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think the stars here plays up to the story more than the other ones over here. Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is just make sure you focus in on the characters. Push back on a little bit of the colors and kind of pick and choose. Pick your battles. I guess for lack of a better phrase, pick your battles so that, or you could set up your illustration without having to be all over the place. Now with that, I would suggest introducing a foreground element. You have a little bit of that here with the brown on the earth. I would probably just simplify that. Let me just use black for now, just to show you what a foreground element would do. I have I'm using a hard brush, neutral brush, opacity 100%, opacity toggle off. I'm just creating silhouettes. Silhouettes are so important. And here, maybe a nice overlap, so that there's a bit of a hidden, forbidden feel to it, like they are amongst the grass. And then you could add color to that. Again, you can use lock transparency or a clipping mask. Maybe take some of the cool color, much darker versions of it. Maybe even a little bit darker. Or you could play up the grass and darken that. Another thing that you want to do going forward, if you decide to kind of start a new drawing, like instead of taking this and trying to work with it, taking, let's say, this and working with it, maybe you want to do a much cleaner version where you could have all the lines and the drawings, and then the first thing you want to do, just color block. Do not add any of the special effects like the clouds in the background or like the lighting effects. Just start with the color blocking. Like this. Just set up where the colors are going to be, and don't worry too much about all these lighting effects. You can do that afterwards, after you finish setting up your colors. And after you do your colors, so color block, and after that you can set up the shadow. That's one thing, we're kind of all over the place here are the shadows. So for the shadows, you go to another layer. Since you have a cool light source here, I want to go with something warm, like a purple. Use a hard brush. Don't use a soft brush. Use a hard brush to map out your shadows. Set it to multiply. You can even do that for the cast shadow. And then if you want to soften them, use the soft brush eraser to create a little bit more transition. And there you go. You have a nice fully formed shadow. With the hard brush you get a little bit more control, so that's why I highly suggest using that. Alright, so I guess moving forward, shadows. And after shadows, then you can add the light. And then effects at the end. I mean, you could add the lighting here, but adding the shadow already pretty much sets you up to add the light. Because just by adding the shadow, you already have a light area with the shadow. So the effects are like the glow stuff like this. So you want to reserve that for the very last part. Okay, hopefully you know where to go from here. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to let me know.